Welcome to IP Talk Brand Insights, a quarterly discussion on the intersection of brand strategy and intellectual property. This series is presented by Virtual Patent Gateway, and our moderator today is Ashley Cheung, VPG Principal and Founder. Ashley is joined by Kim Klemballa, Head of Marketing at CoinDesk Indices, Catherine Rubino, co-author of You Are an IP Company, and Sasha Sohkis, Head of Client Relations and Business Development at Unified Patents. And with that, I'll pass things over to Ashley to get started.
Thank you, Kaylin. Thank you, Kim, Sasha, and Katie for joining today. I'm going to give a very quick introduction to each one of you, and then I will ask each one of you one fun fact that you want to share with our audience today. Ready? So I'm going to start with Kim first. Kim Klemballa is Head of Marketing for CoinDesk Indices, where she leads marketing and brand initiative and brings 20 years of experiences in the financial industry. She started at 8. She specializes in business development and marketing strategy, focusing on partnerships, branding, communications, and digital initiatives. Share with us one fun fact, Kim.
Sure. So first, thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here. Fun fact about me, I really like to travel. I've been to about 50 countries, and one of the most memorable ones was Antarctica. Took an explorer boat with about 100 people down the Drake Passage and dropped off scientists that were going to be staying at the Ukraine station down there. So really fun trip there. And yep, that's my fun fact, travel.
Did you do the polar plunge?
I did the polar plunge.
Okay.
It actually wasn't that bad. There were medics on site when people were going in just to make sure. But it was fun. Yes, you have to polar plunge if you're going down to Antarctica.
I have a friend that did 2 polar plunge. I was like, you're crazy, but I love you for it.
One was enough for me.
Yeah, okay. Katie Rubino is a partner in the corporate department at Wigan & Dana LLP, Boston-based. And not Boston-based, but she's located in Boston, frequently representing clients and counseling companies across the life sciences industry. Katie is also experienced in transactions involving IP rights, strategic partnerships, licensing, and research collaboration. She is also a co-author of the book, You Are an IP Company, the 12 Steps Plan to Increase Your Intellectual Property Influence, Impact, and Income, co-author with Carrie Oberrunner. I was actually on that podcast. So one fun fact, Katie.
Yeah, I think a fun fact. So this past fall, Carrie actually was coming to Boston for this book thinkers conference, and so as part of the conference, the first day of the conference, we ran a Spartan race, and so that was like my first time ever doing it, and it was just a really fun experience to do that.
That sounds very exciting. Thank you. And maybe next time when Carrie goes to Boston, let me know. I'm going to train up. Maybe we can invite Kim and Sasha to go there too. We'll have an IRL in-person meeting. I just invited all of you. Thank you. Sasha Sohkis is VP, Head of Client Relations and Business Development for Unified Patents, leading business development and membership expansion efforts that drove a 40% increase in revenue, using data analysis, market research, and targeted sales strategy to acquire new business. She managed relationship with Fortune 500 members, while also leading and mentoring a team to support growth and deliver tailored client engagement. Sasha, one fun fact.
Thank you, Ashley, and thanks for having me. So fun to be in this group. One fun fact about me. So before I started law school and while I was in college in Los Angeles, I worked in fashion, and I worked at LA Fashion Week with IMG International, and all of the agents and the team in Los Angeles were all attorneys, and they encouraged me to go to law school. And, I envisioned working in that industry. Of course, I took a very different turn, although there's a lot of fashion and there's a lot of IP in fashion and interesting topics. But before going into law and a very serious, focused career in patents, I was working in Fashion Week with celebrities and brands and things that are really fun before the kind of, I'm dating myself, but a few decades ago, before the influencer social media world was out there. Fun fact, past life.
I see. Well, thank you so much for all three of you for sharing. I'm Ashley Cheung, your host today, and also a moderator. So we are going to have this particular challenge of having 4 different topics. We'll see how many we can actually get through, because it might get very exciting. So the first topic that we're going to talk about is building your voice and brand. Second, it's going to be voice within your teams and organization. The third, we're going to have a little bit of current events, trademark, brand, and the law. And the fourth one is going to be very interesting, is on mentorship, authenticity, and credibility. Ready? First question. It's to Kim and Sasha in that order. The main theme of this podcast episode is amplifying your voice and using it for advocacy and visibility within your personal brand. How have you used your voice strategically to establish yourself within your respective fields? So let's start with Kim.
Sure. So I think when it comes to using your voice strategically, I like to think of it as having control and intent. So what do I mean by that? Control, you build your brand by controlling your voice and knowing what narratives you want to shape. And not just your voice, you can think of it as your words, your tone, alongside your respective mannerisms. These all represent who you are, and they establish how you're perceived in turn. So I say this because sometimes we may say things or act in a way that may not represent who we are or who we want to be. And it's always important to pause at these moments and reflect on them as learnings and be mindful to use your voice impactfully. And impactful to me means there's intention. You're using your voice to ask thought-provoking questions to help problem solve. You're matching others' communication style to make them more comfortable and yourself more approachable. And you're vocalizing issues with suggested answers to achieve your goals to then reach that intended outcome.
Perfect. Sasha, same question.
Sure, Ashley. And in preparing for this podcast and talking about some of the topics we talked in preparation, it made me reflect a lot about my own brand, what I've created professionally and personally, what I've done intentionally. And interestingly, Ashley, I kind of delved into what Adam Grant said and what your counter argument to him was. And I think that I'm a firm believer in that your brand is what you focus on with your knowledge, your contribution, your collaboration with others. So you're bringing your strong reputation and credibility to creating a brand. And in today's world, there are different brands that you have, or different personas. There's the online digital persona, which has been a huge new kind of industry out there. And Ashley, you've capitalized on it so well to be, like you're saying, so many different followers and creating a platform for us and for different women out there, for different professionals to have a voice, which I think is amazing. To have a digital footprint like that, which, sometimes, and I mentioned, I find intimidating. It's a big audience out there that you're speaking to. And then there's also the way that you're really carrying yourself in your personal life and your real reputation in your day-to-day. What I found, especially in an industry like patents, is that your voice and your advocacy, it really has to bring clarity, and especially for complex topics, when you're speaking internally to your team, when you're advocating for your team members. And as a team leader, I think the main a big component of that is to advocate for others that might not be as loud in the room, and creating a brand around that. Speaking with purpose, and a lot of what Kim said is intention as well. So having a powerful voice, but making what you're doing intentional in both your personal life, your digital persona, your digital footprint. I think that's very important.
Thank you. Thank you also for acknowledging like the struggle that I've been going through this journey, because I'm not necessarily the type of person that would actually ever thought that I would have a huge follower. I'm mostly private, and so it was really a struggle to actually be present and just kind of showing up, because I would be thinking, oh God, what would I look like? And how does that sound? English is not my first language. But I think at some point it just kind of like, forget about it. It's not about me anyway. So I just kind of try to come up, look clean on the camera, and basically just say what I have to say, and engage with people that are actually, would benefit, and actually take the time to engage, and be helpful. And I think that's kind of helped me not focus on myself so much. And thank you so much for remembering when I said about Adam Grant too, because I'm a huge fan of Adam Grant. And so during last year, I did some branding workshop, and then I knew that he had a podcast that talked about doesn't believe in personal brand. So I'm like, really I'm not a brand strategist myself, but I know many. So I'm like, this is kind of unfair. So I emailed him. I said, I think this is kind of unfair. I'm going to do a rebuttal. He goes like, go ahead. And then I'm like, I'm going to do it on my Wonderlist newsletter. And then after that, I'm going to send it to you. It was like, sure. So I sent it to him. It was like, oh, I read this. And it's interesting, but I kind of stand with my position. It's like, great. At least you consider my opinion. So that's all I asked for, because we all have different opinions. So, but I just kind of want to acknowledge both of you for actually remember our fun prep. So next question, Katie. Being visible can come with criticism and pushback, especially as women in professional fields. And IP field, the legal fields are very male dominated for the most part. And what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think it happens to anybody these days, just because of how prevalent things like social media are, and how much easier it is to say something badly about someone when you're hiding behind that kind of electronic screen, right? Rather than, a lot of times the criticism that maybe someone gets virtually, it's not the same someone would say to your face, right? And so I think you just have to go into it expecting that, and not letting it bother you. People are going to criticize you for things you do well and things you don't do well, right? And so learning to not take it personally is really important. And if it, the thing is too that I've learned, if situations are terrible or unsustainable, right, then leaving that workplace is probably the best thing you can do for yourself, and finding a place where you do feel respected and valued. I think that's so important, because a lot of times, we think things will change, or we want to make it work, but maybe that's not always possible.
I think that's when you actually have to go deep and believe in yourself, that big trust in yourself, having that big trust. I want to also, as I'm looking at all of you, I was like, oh, I forgot to do disclaimer. Disclaimer, all of this is personal opinion, does not reflect on their employers and employees as well. But I just want to make sure that we have that legal disclaimer here. So, Sasha, how do you navigate the tension between advocating for yourself, ideas, or others while protecting your personal brand?
Yeah, so I have spent the majority of my career, aside from the fashion world, in a very male-dominated space. I think the majority of us actually have, maybe even patents being more so than trademark. I always go to a trademark event and everyone's so fashionable and fun. Patents is a lot more black suits and formal. And I think that makes it extra important as a young woman when I started my career, not so young anymore, but to make sure that you are advocating for yourself, and that advocacy has to be anchored in substance and your knowledge and credibility. I think that's extremely important, especially also to make sure that you're clear in your contributions, and often in a place that can be overlooked, or if your voice isn't loud enough, it could be, you have to do a little bit of your own self promotion, but in a very tactful, graceful way. So I think the goal is to protect your brand, and not by shrinking yourself, to really protect it, and to be clear and principled and consistent with the value that you bring. On my to-do list recently is to read Emma Greed's new book, Start With Yourself. I don't know if you I followed her for years. For those of you that don't know, she is a very, very successful businesswoman. She is the business woman behind all the Kardashian brands. So Skims, Good American, some other brands that she's created. She's literally the Kardashian whisperer. She's built these brands literally capitalizing on the Kardashian image and brands. And so she came out with this book just last week. So I haven't gotten a chance to read it yet, but I've listened to a lot of her podcasts. And she is unapologetic and very direct, and she believes in a lot of self-advocacy, talking about the difficult topics like money and negotiating for yourself, and the way that motherhood impacts your careers. And those are really, really interesting topics, especially right now. So I've been inspired by her, to make sure that you're visible, that you're direct, that you are advocating for yourself with clarity and credibility.
That's amazing. What is the book? What is the title of the book?
It's Start With Yourself is the title.
I think I might have came across her podcast. Because I listen to podcasts in the morning, and sometimes it's a random, but usually a diary of a CEO, and then I have listening to this particular. I listen to Vanessa Van Edwards a lot. She's a behavioral scientist, and basically really look into body language, gesture, and how do you read people. And she wrote like Cute and Captivate, and I've been following her for years. Of course, Simon Sinek and different people. So one of the things, and of course, my friend Sasha Strauss, and I just had a conversation with him yesterday because he was doing a recording for me for my May 6th event at Times Square. And I know Kim cannot come, but Christine is going to come. He was like on the WhatsApp group. She goes, I'm going to come support you and sign me up. And I was like, who are you? She was like, Christine. I was like, oh gosh, I'm so sorry. So that was really interesting. But Sasha, one of the very first thing is that about 5 years ago when I took his class, I didn't sound very confident, but I knew what I was talking about. So he was like, he got online, he got on basically unmute, and he was like, I like what you said, but I'm going to correct your language. I was like, oh God, is it my English that you're correcting? He was not really, just like the tone and the language that I used that was a bit wishy-washy. And so what he said until today, I still remember, and we talked about that yesterday, is like, we can't believe in you unless we hear you believe in yourself. So I think a lot of that, people generally struggle with it, but I think sometimes women, even very successful women, still has that. So that's why we need to have a community of people, empower women that rocks, Kim, and that really just kind of let each other know how powerful and incredible we each are. So that finished our first topic. So now topic 2, voice within teams and organization. Um, I'm gonna start with Kim first again. How do you amplify your individual voice while still operating as part of a team or organization where alignment and collaboration are essential?
So I think when your team succeeds, you succeed, right? So it's always good to first look at the team and how can you make that succeed. From like a process stance and an ops stance, you have that, but just from like a personal stance and how you can be yourself and authentic, like you had said initially, but still adjust your behavior and tone and approach to make team members comfortable, right? Because when your team's comfortable, that's good for everyone. So I like to look at it. How do they like to communicate? What's their communication style? Do they like to email? Or they call people? Are they meeting people? And if you don't know, just look at the behavior. Sometimes you call people and they say, hey, can you just send me an email? Or you send an email and they say, can we have a call on this? And don't get me wrong, sometimes you need to bring everyone collectively together for a meeting, but knowing how they like to interact, what makes them the most comfortable, and then how they like to be communicated to. There's a lot of research out there. Are you emotionally driven? Are you brain logically driven? And if you don't know the answer to how you're talking to someone, once again, just listen to what they're giving you. If someone says, I think this, that means they're more logically driven. It's a more logical approach you want to have with them. If someone comes to you and says, I feel this, they're more emotionally driven. You want to be a little more sensitive. So I think not just looking at the project, but the shape of the team and making everyone comfortable can also help achieve success. And like I said before, that'll really help amplify you when you're amplifying others up.
That's great. 2 points came to mind. One is that when you talk about comfort, growth does not actually happen when people are in comfort, in my experience. So how do you know when to challenge someone out of their comfort zone so that they can grow? And then second, you use the word I think, and I was listening to another podcast that the guy was saying that, don't use so much words like I think, but I have observed to increase credibility. What are your thoughts on both points?
Okay, so point one, good point. I think if someone's not achieving goals or living up to those expectations, that's when you can reevaluate. But if you have someone that's achieving what they need to do and doing what they need to do, like keep them on that trajectory, right? Like make sure you're challenging them. But I do think that you don't want people to get too comfortable. And if there starts to be some parallel, it's all about balance. So knowing when that balance shifts, my initial approach is let's make everyone comfortable to get those goals achieved. And if something starts to derail, you reevaluate and take it from there and treat it individually. And then to your other point on, and I'm sorry, it was I observe versus I think.
Yes. I don't know that I actually agree. I think that it might be a gender differences there in terms of what the person was saying. I'm just trying to see what your thoughts are.
It's a new one for me. I typically don't hear people say, I observe this. It's interesting. I mean, I'm inclined to say it's just semantics.
Yes.
Someone's observing, someone's thinking. Good. Is it real? Like, are you thinking and we can have this conversation, or are you observing something that's meaningful to the conversation? So I think at the bottom, at like the end of the day, are they bringing the value they need? So are they comfortable in bringing value? Great, let's keep doing that. Are they observing? Are they thinking? Are they feeling and bringing value? Great, let's keep doing that. And then when the value starts to decline, then you need to reassess the approach.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That was totally unplanned, and you did amazing. Katie, to you, same question.
Oh
How
yeah,
do you amplify your individual voice while still operating as a part of a team or organization where alignment and collaboration are essential?
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of what Kim said really resonates to me, right? When you're kind of leading a team, you want to find ways to keep people excited and motivated, right? And I think a big part of that is how you shape the culture around the team and how you can kind of figure out what are the areas that maybe speak to the team members' strengths and play to those. And, we all have our strengths and our weaknesses. And even as leaders, we know where our blind spots are. And so kind of building that team with a focus on that, I think that can go a long way and just really getting everybody excited and aligned and keeping the momentum going and the excitement high too.
Thank you. Sasha, what does a different question? What does advocacy and visibility look like within a team dynamic, particularly when it comes to supporting colleagues, addressing concerns, or ensuring people's voices are heard?
Yeah, great answers by Kim and Katie too that I think leverage a lot of that. I think advocacy, or I observe that advocacy and visibility.
I love it. Immediately applying.
Immediately applying the feedback in masterclass in public speaking. Visibility inside a team and as a team member is making sure that the right ideas are being heard, the right people are being seen. And I believe that's rooted in fairness too. I'm very straight with my team. I love this idea. I give a lot of feedback. I have a team member who's much more quiet and another one who's a lot more self-boasting. And I kind of tell this guy, take a page out of this book, and you have to toot your own horn at times, but you have to do so gracefully and credibly. It's a big responsibility as a team member, is to make sure that I help those whose contributions may not be as visible, those that might be quieter or newer, to take up, to advocate for them. I think that's especially important in a work from home culture, where you have to be more intentional about those things. You're not as visible oftentimes in a work from home culture. And that's actually something Emma Gray talks about, which makes me rethink my whole, I work from home. I see a lot of Zoom, but there's not as much opportunity for a natural self-promotion, for example, or natural networking. The other, I think, important thing was when I came into Unified 6 years ago, the company has been around for more than a decade now, but it was a small company where there weren't a lot of established processes. There wasn't an ability to set more accountability as the team grew. So that was one of the things I did when I came in, is to make sure that we created more foundation on what processes are, how things get done, to make sure, one, that we're really going through that process. We're taking the ideas that are in the founders' heads and the leadership heads, putting them down in a way that as the team grows, we can educate the team better. And to be able to, one, advocate for individual growth, then as the business team, also to advocate for our members in a clear way, because we are the face of the company. We're liaisoning between our members of Unified with the members of the legal team or the others in the company, the software, the development. We're taking the feedback and making it actionable. So we created a way to be able to do that. And that actually, as the team grows, we're able to show progress, and that's a way of advocating for yourself, for the way that you're accomplishing things, or maybe things that aren't working, to come back and say, well, we've tried all these things, let's sit down and think about different ideas. And I think that's really important in a small team, and it's especially important as the team grows.
I mean, that's so important. The term that knowledge management comes to mind. You are hoping to, and I mean, I think coincidentally, or maybe not so coincidentally, many of the people that I've observed that want to instill processes are typically women.
100%.
Because we want processing, right? So I thought that was really good contribution that you have actually offered to the team, the unified team, and really want to give you high applause for that. All right, we're at 30 minutes mark, so let me move on to topic 3. Trademark, brand, and the law. So at the time when we are preparing this panel, when we did the prep, I was like, scroll through Instagram, Taylor Swift's lawsuit came up. And I was like, maybe we could talk a little bit about that. So I'm going to point this to Katie. One of the chapters in your book, You Are an IP Company, is on Taylor Swift. She is really aggressive in terms of her trademark. And she has all kinds of marks. And she's currently facing a lawsuit on her latest album, The Life of a Showgirl, which I think the plaintiff is actually, I should not think, I don't even observe, I know. The plaintiff is Maren Wade from Las Vegas, and her mark is The Confession of a Showgirl. And what are your personal observations on this case? And how does it tie back to the concept of likelihood of confusion?
Oh, yeah, sure. So,
yeah, that's so easy.
I think this is a case everyone is interested in, because Taylor Swift, what most people don't know is she herself has taken a very forward-leaning approach to protect her intellectual property. So she owns hundreds of trademarks, copyrights, all of her music. And so she has a pretty sizable portfolio, and she was sued by this other trademark owner whose trademark was registered, I think, since 2014. So a long time. And the basis of this lawsuit is that Taylor Swift's use of her confessions, her Life of a Showgirl, is confusing to consumers with the already existing Confessions of a Showgirl trademark that Maren Wade registered. So I think everyone is watching to see what's going to happen here. There's a couple of ways this might play out. Number one would be they might reach some sort of settlement agreement, right? And most likely, that'll be confidential. We won't know what really the terms of that are, or the lawsuit might continue to trial, and she might have to pay damages if she is found to be infringing the mark, and that there is this likelihood of confusion for the consumers.
Yeah, I'm not an attorney. I've been working on mostly almost like 90% of patent litigation cases. And then, so trademark, I've only purchased alleged products before. But one of the things that while I was reading about the case, the USPTO actually rejected this initially. And saying that, basically pointing to this Confession of a Showgirl case. And it apparently the team, actually proceeded with this. So I think I'm obviously, this is total disclaimer, and I'm not an attorney, but in patent litigation, generally speaking, they would have willful infringement. It's actually a word for if it's proven that there's willful infringement is triple of damages. And I don't know about the trademark part, and I know that you are also a patent attorney. So that is something that I'm just really interested in. What's going through people's mind if they get a rejection? Don't you have if they reject it and not just an office action? I just don't know how this would actually proceed it. But like you said, only time will tell. But Kim, you're not an attorney too. So I'm interested in your thought on this.
So yes, my disclosure time, not a lawyer, not an attorney. So putting the law stuff aside, what I'm most curious, or just my first thought was, what narrative do you build around this to protect the marketing and brand you have? And maybe, I mean, outside of the courtroom, do you respond? And maybe the lawyers, you can't, like, there's no direct response, it's cease and desist. So directly versus indirectly, like family and friends taking more of a scripted stance. So I thought it'd be interesting, like an interesting exercise, to have AI like comb through a website, look at the news, look at the socials, and see what the responses are. Is it positive, neutral, negative? Like what's going on? Like let's map out what people are actually thinking. And I'm making this number up. But if 90% of the articles are favorable to saying, we don't think Taylor's guilty, how does that factor into the overall approach? Not what's going to happen inside the courtroom, or maybe it does. I don't know. That's for a lawyer to, I would ask you, Katie. But like a public response, because a lot of that and what's going on would impact brands and marketing. And if the lawsuit, and this is more of a question or me just thinking out loud because it's very interesting to me, like if she had this favorable brand and they slap this lawsuit on her and she's not guilty, are they then liable for going after her? I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but I do think overall, like, there's the law question, but there's also this whole narrative brand impact.
That's wonderful that you injected AI into this, because how much of this alleged 90% would be hallucinations? One might wonder. Because I was just reading something, I read a lot. So something came up, there's a law firm that actually admitted to the court that one of their brief has AI hallucination. It was just like earlier this week. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow. I mean, we've seen sanctions from another case before. And how do you actually openly, knowing all of this landmines with AI, how do you actually just turn in a brief and not fact-checked or sidetracked? I don't know. In this case, I think it's fact-checked. Sasha, you are an attorney, but not a trademark one. What are your thoughts on this topic?
Yes, that's my caveat. I don't know much about trademark law aside from
Taylor Swift
that we're doing with Unified Brands. But and first of all, Katie, amazing work on the book. What a great topic and very, very relevant one. I also have to caveat by saying I'm not a Swiftie. And my daughter hasn't discovered her yet. We're much more stuck on K-pop Demon Hunters here.
Oh,
so but
we talk about that too.
I do have great respect for her songwriting, the brand that she's developed, the following, it is incredibly impressive. I do think this kind of builds on kind of what Kim said. She's such a huge star. So anything that she does gets magnified. And I don't know the details of this case. I did read about that, Ashley. Her trademark was rejected by the PTO early on. So to go forward with doing that anyways, is that willful? Again, I don't know the details of this, but it is, on one hand, it makes me think that someone is capitalizing on the Taylor Swift brand and creating a case around it. And anything that Taylor Swift does is going to be magnified substantially, right? And there's so much visibility around her, and potentially that the plaintiff in this case is there a likelihood of confusion? How popular was this? Or is it the reverse confusion that they're associating the two because of Taylor Swift's later popularity? Those are all interesting things to think about, and I find trademark law to be fascinating. I think a really important lesson here is just visibility. So there's a lot more onus on Taylor Swift, right? Everything she does is looked upon by thousands and millions of young people. So being a good actor, I think, is even more important for someone that has such a huge platform. So this could be a good example of, hey, you did something that you really shouldn't have. You took advantage of someone's brand and likeness, and you kind of went on your way anyways because you think you're just, you're a bigger, better character. And I think that's very important, being a positive voice on such a big platform.
So I think one thing that I am just thinking as when we tie into leadership, Taylor Swift has to go out and perform. She would not have time to go look at all of this stuff. It really rests on her team. She trusted her team. Someone looked at this allegedly and then didn't do anything about it and went through with it. If that's the case, then as a leader, unfortunately, she had to shoulder her team's, kind of performance and also decision. And sometimes it's extremely unfair to the leader because they trust. It's almost like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And you trusted your team to do that work because that's why you're a team. And then when it comes to like the outcome, you cannot really blame your team for stuff because you have to be like own up to what you do. So I think this is a really interesting discussion. It's really interesting to see how people, is this like a big, superstar that is taking advantage of a small entrepreneur, or is it just that sort of reverse of people trying to get money because she is a superstar? I don't know. Look out. We are moving to topic. Oh no, we're not moving to topic 4. We're talking to Sasha. Stay on this. You work on unified brands, and to the extent that you are able to share, how do you or your team determine whether a likelihood of confusion exists between two trademarks? How does unified brands work once trademark infringement is determined? If you're comfortable to share.
Sure. So Unified Patents, as the parent company, the goal is to protect companies against patent troll litigation. So staying on that same brand of deterring bad actors, we created a sister company called Unified Brands a few years ago. And that goal of this company is to fight counterfeit sales of products online. The way that we do that is we file a very specific proceeding called a Schedule A, where you're identifying counterfeit products on marketplaces. So for example, Amazon. As far as the likelihood of confusion and things like trademarks, it has to be a counterfeit. So an Apple logo rather than something that says compatible with an Apple device. So those are very clear distinctions. I actually just went to a CLE this week about dupes versus counterfeit products. So saying you're getting a Lululemon dupe is very different than selling a product with a Lululemon logo. That would be much more that's a counterfeit. And that is something that you can do a takedown and recover damages under a Schedule A. So it's not sufficient to say it's compatible or some likeness, but if you're using the logo, if you're using the product photographs, things like that. And that's been a very interesting line of business for us, especially as just having a way of the bigger brands to protect and keep their counterfeit products off the market. It's deterring these actors from doing that. There's a lot of automotive brands who there's keychains and products out there and that they don't license those. Interestingly, there's a big market for counterfeit remotes. There's also, of course, different toothbrushes that are toothbrush replacement heads, things like that. But it also expands to things that are actually, safety wise. So there's been a big market for counterfeit products like makeup products or vitamins or things that you think you're getting a product you're actually putting on or in your body, and those are counterfeit, and they're using the same branding. So that's something out there that we're looking to enforce against. Or of course, there's big markets of things that are really dangerous, like counterfeit airbags or safety parts in an automotive, things like that. So it just has to be a very clear branding between those for this particular Schedule A to work. There's definitely other methods of protecting brands out there, but Unified Brands focuses on that, and it's been very successful.
Well, thank you for doing that to really actually help make sure that consumers are being protected. Because especially with vitamins, airbags, and things like that, it really directly go into personal safety. So
Yeah.
All right, topic 4. We have 14 minutes left. I was a timekeeper once. Mentorship, authenticity, and credibility. So we're going to close this substantive content on some reflective personal notes, which sets up the sign off beautifully. So Kim, has mentorship and collaboration helped you amplify your voice as a brand strategist? What intentions do you set forth to maintain authenticity without compromising professional credibility? Real easy question.
I thought two things when I saw this question. The first is, because this is one of my favorite quotes, and I've said this a lot, so I just say it whenever I can. And I learned it from a mentor, and he had said long time ago that if you're the smartest person at the table, you're at the wrong table. So it's equally important to mentee and mentor and just always be learning. So I always just like to get that one in wherever I can. And then when it comes to collaboration and professionalism and credibility, I think generally, and this is just a general blanket statement, credibility comes from how you handle yourself in situations and then how you can drive yourself and others to achieving the end goals. So when you're driving towards goals and teams and projects and you're trying to move things forward, I get asked a lot, how do we do this? And honestly, I've learned how to do it from not doing it so well a few times, where are the gaps? So I thought it might be good for 90 seconds to kind of just fill in the gaps of, from the beginning, how can you get to where you want to be? Because it's hard to start somewhere, So in the beginning, I always look at, the collaboration, the process, and setting it up for success. Start with the end. To get to the beginning, start at the end. What's your end outcome? Because if you don't know what your end outcome is, what are we even doing? And then spending time on the process matters. The process will make or break it. And what do I mean by that? What are your goals? Do you have realistic deadlines? Do you have the right people? Do you have the right technology to support it? Who are your core stakeholders? And by stakeholders, who's involved, who's reviewing, and who's signing off? Like, how many times do we get to an end of a project to then have someone who should have been involved not be involved, and it's like a reset? And then also, how are you ongoing communications with transparency to plan that project throughout? And listen, when collaboration's going well, that's easy, right? There's accolades, there's recognition, it's a team approach, and the ongoing communications matter because, like a lot of sports people will say, you don't celebrate a victory until the game's over. But when there's difficulty, this is where the authenticity and compromise comes in, because in difficulty, you always want to identify blockers, right? Is it technology? Is it process? And the most difficult one, is it a person issue? And you always want to go to the other two before you go to the third one. And I think no matter what it is, it's always important to, remove the emotion where you can, focus on that end outcome and the deadlines to get there. Because at the end of the day we have a job to do. And sometimes if you can't go, alongside the wall, you have to go around it or just go through it. but you can always be professional. And the words you say or type cannot be retracted once they are seen or heard. So this goes back to the very first thing of using your voice appropriately.
Mic drop.
Oh, good. I nailed it. Good.
Yes, you passed, and you not only passed, you got a mic drop there.
Oh, nice.
So now it just added a little bit of pressure to Katie and Sasha. Same question. Katie.
Yeah, that's such a hard one to follow. I think too, what's key is finding the right mentors for you at different times in your career or life too, because at different times you might need different types of mentors who maybe had different experiences. And I think it can be hard to always seek out mentors, but I think when you're early on in your career, maybe you're afraid to ask someone for help or advice, right? And I think, especially in the legal profession, most lawyers are very friendly. And so if you're a law student, right, or aspiring to practice maybe in a certain area of the law, you should definitely reach out to lawyers who are already practicing there, and they'll most likely be more than happy to, have a Zoom or meet you for a coffee or something. And so I think it also goes to how you build the mentors and, trying to seek out mentors who have maybe been through experiences that you're now facing, who have that depth of knowledge that can really provide the right sort of advice and feedback, and who have lived it themselves and know what it's like being faced with particular circumstances or challenges too.
Thank you. Sasha?
Yeah, great answers, ladies. My only addition to that, I think, is encouraging people to take and seek out mentors or be a mentor. I think everyone, no matter where you are in your career or, mentorship career or personal life, having someone to look up to is so important. I think it's creating a safe space with someone that you trust to be able to bounce ideas, to be able to get honest feedback. I have a mentor who was actually my first boss back out of law school. And then probably a decade after that, I actually hired her to join my team when I was at the bank. And, we worked together, and it is a constant relationship that we have as we move through our careers, where it's a safe person who has years of experience beyond me that I can talk about, how do I balance this? What are some ideas? How do you think AI is impacting our legal profession? Or how do I leverage these things, both professionally, personally? Is this a good time in my motherhood to take on a new opportunity? Things like that, where you can't just talk about that with everybody. Friends who aren't in your business or colleagues, I encourage everyone to seek out someone that you can do that with, because it's so important. And then on the other side is being a good mentor. That's also very impactful to yourself. It really encourages you to deep down and say, okay, well, how did I do things right? What could have I improved for, talking to myself 10 years ago, 20 years ago? What should I been thinking about? And a lot of it is, I think the piece of advice is that nothing's final. You can always change course. And I think as a younger person, you have to be reminded of that. This isn't your only career opportunity. This isn't your only boyfriend. These are all things that you want to go back and think about how you may have perceived that you can help maybe positively influence someone that's going through it right now. So I think that's a very important thing about mentorship and building a community and being able to really progress in your career.
Well, we have 5 minutes. I was even faster than Caitlin. Caitlin, do we have any questions from the audience? No, I don't see anything. So we're going to do our rapid fire questions to the panelists. I am going to give a couple of closing. No questions. Yes, I knew that because we cover everything perfectly. So the first thing that I've observed, and thank you to our panelists and also Caitlin for handling this today. The very first one, I think Kim kind of talked about it, but I always remember this as Stephen Covey, begin with an end in mind. And so that is something that a panel also cover. And then teamwork makes the dream work. And it's like people follow leaders. They also leave because of the leaders many times. So we have to basically set the example. And, when you are also, leaders also need to be great followers sometimes. Let your team speak. And one of the so Dr. Roy Cooper, who's actually from the National Inventor Hall of Fame, he talks about a concept of rotational leadership. And it was last season of IP Talk Brand Insight. And I also interviewed him on a podcast. And I asked him, I said, Dr. Cooper, what makes you such a successful leader? He said, well, everybody on the team has something to contribute. It doesn't matter what position they are in, because leadership is not positional. It's not positions, generally speaking. You will have your title, but each person from top to bottom in the organization, they have something to contribute. So rotational leadership, that particular concept is letting other people be heard. So we've kind of talked about that. Sasha talked about mentorship, and I think that we also need to make sure that we seek out sponsorship. And people that are in a position to sponsor should really consider doing that, because you are where you are today because someone else believed in you. And if you don't believe in yourself yet, it's great if you believe in yourself, but if you don't believe in yourself yet, then find someone who believes in you until you can actually change your narrative to actually believe in yourself. So I would want to actually give a shout out to this particular gallery of women, because when I reach out, I wasn't sure whether you would say yes, but you believe in the concept, you believe in that idea, you believe in the community of empowering women, and IP Talk Brand Insights. So that's that. AI, of course, everybody's talking about AI. So now 45 seconds. Let's start with Katie. Your one takeaway.
From today?
Yes.
Yeah, I think today's takeaway, I really like what Kim mentioned about mentorship and how she thinks about building the team. And I think Sasha had such good comments too around how to support others and really the importance of the role that the leader plays. And Ashley, I think it's always fun to be here and to see you. So thanks so much for having me.
Okay, Sasha, you next.
I'm going to go off of something you just said, which is sponsorship. And I talked about what Katie just said is bringing up the team as a team leader, but you forget about the fact that actually you also need to seek someone to bring you up. If you don't have that, that's actually a very good reminder. So finding a sponsor or a champion of your work to propel you further, I think is really important. That's a really good takeaway, that in the whole helping others, you forget about yourself. So that's I think a very important takeaway.
And also, I think Kim also said that you don't want to be the only person in the room that knows the most. And so you are going to have to invest in yourself enough to basically constantly change your neighborhood.
Mhm.
Not be the only person that continually contribute to others have to also contribute to you, to your own growth. So Kim, mic drop moment for you. 45 seconds or maybe 30 seconds takeaway. No pressure.
So once again, the intended outcome. A lot of us spoke about it. From a brand side, define your brand, or someone's going to define it for you. Know what you want, setting those specific and attainable goals to get there. Sometimes things seem daunting. So build that actionable plan and hold yourself to deadlines. Surround yourself with people that will empower you and motivate you, and know that you can get there. And if you don't know where to start and you need some motivation, you can give me a call, unless if you need a lawyer. That's going to Katie.
Going to Katie.
And I just want to thank everyone, and thank you, Ashley, for having me here. This was a lot of fun.
All right, let's give everybody a round of applause here. And then on that note, we are done, and have a wonderful day.